Woo boy! Don't get too excited for Netflix's live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender series. We should have all been thinking this last week with just every article that's getting released about the showrunners, about the actors, and what they had to say about the show that's been a bit concerning, let's put it that way for now. And it's a shame, too, because I think it was a month ago or a few weeks ago, the trailer comes out to mostly positive reception. I mean, it was looking pretty good. I thought it was alright, but then, of course, you gotta remember that the Shyamalan movie, also, that trailer looked pretty good. So maybe we don't trust that, at least with the Avatar series. But not like there weren't red flags out there, like this article that was released back in November, so quite a few months ago, and it was detailing how DiMartino and Konietzko had left this production for some reason, and it's not quite specified what it is. Maybe they're trying to remain as ambiguous as possible. You want to maintain a certain level of professionalism and not appear, like that person who's difficult to work with. Plus, who knows? Maybe another 10 years from now, there might be another adaptation of Avatar. That they might be gunning for. But these quotes, despite being very vague, still come across as a bit spiteful. And it's, let's get into them. Unfortunately, things did not go as we had hoped. Look, things happen. Unforeseen events arise. Plans have changed. And when those things have happened at other points during my career, I try to be like an air nomad and adapt. I do my best to go with the flow, no matter what obstacle is put in my way. But even an air nomad knows when it's time to cut their losses and move on. And yeah, so especially that last part, cut your losses. I'm like, oof, that sounds a little, they weren't very happy with how things went with this adaptation. For some reason, but the second quote, it might turn out to be a show many of you end up enjoying. But what I can be certain about is whatever version ends up on screen, it will not be what Brian and I envisioned or intended to make. So already a huge sign that maybe it's not going to turn out that great. But getting into the more contentious stuff that's been kind of circulating the past few weeks, let's get into those. Oh, going back here. So one thing that struck me was the showrunner mentioning that this Netflix adaptation, it will not be a cover, it'll be a remix. Interesting terminology, but digging into that a little bit more with the journalist asking this question, I think one of the big question is, despite all the remixing, is the point A and the point B still the same as the original? And then they go on to answer, pretty much, yeah, I think the state of the world and the stakes of the world are still the same, so we decided to make Aang's narrative drive a little clearer. In the first season of the animated series, he's kind of going from place to place looking for adventures, which is in character for Aang to be doing that. But I'll let it continue before. He even says, first, we've got to go and ride the elephant koi. It's a little looser as befits a cartoon already, dogging on the original cartoon, but okay. We needed to make sure that he had that drive from the start, and so that's a change we made. We essentially give him this vision of what's going to happen, and he says, I have to get to the Northern Water Tribe to stop this from happening. That gives him so much more narrative compulsion going forward, as opposed to, let's make a detour and go ride the elephant koi, that type of thing. So, that's something, again, that's part of the process of going from a Nickelodeon cartoon to a Netflix serialized drama. And already, this is kind of betrayal is a very strong word, but that's kind of what it is. It is a betrayal of his character. you got to understand, I mean, especially, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've already watched the entire Avatar: The Last Airbender series or know most about it. But Aang as a character is very much a free spirit character. And he has a destiny to fulfill that he just plainly rejects because he wants to be free. He just wants to be a 12-year-old kid going on adventures, riding on elephant koi. And cutting those parts out and making him more narratively driven, more focused on accomplishing his task is a complete betrayal of that, because that's something he has to overcome. That, yes, this destiny is thrust onto him, and he has to learn to accept it. And on top of that, you know, a lot of the times their detours and the like, they make them because in the original he sees, or they learn of Sozin's comet coming in a year. So, you know, of course, a year is still not that long to master all the elements that, like, he needs to. But it doesn't mean he can't go off a day doing something fun here and there. I mean, it is still 365 days, you know? So that's a little bit concerning. But then I think what's been the center of the news has been to do with Sokka's characters and what the actors have been saying about them. Specifically Sokka. So okay. Anyways, 21, the actor for Sokka, knew early on what he hoped to maintain in his character from the original. I wanted to make sure that Sokka is funny, he says. Something tells us that wasn't necessarily a challenge, judging by the laugh he periodically lets out that might sound familiar to Sokka fans. And I think part of that is also in response to M. Night Shyamalan's version of the of Sokka, just him being so stern and serious. Kind of like how the showrunner is describing how he wants to make Aang, was basically Sokka, so like narratively focused. But Usli notes, there's more weight with realism in every way. Some things that worked in the more zany animated kids show hit differently in live action. Again, kind of ragging on the original. Like, maybe they don't mean to do that, but then this would be Katara's actor mentions one of them. I feel like we also took out the element of how sexist Sokka was. I feel like there were a lot of moments in the show that were iffy, and that's gotten people a little bit riled up. This one quote has been kind of going on like crazy. And this is a weird thing I've been finding, where a lot of these articles will link to Reddit threads for discussions, and I understand that maybe sometimes they want quotes from like Twitter and the like, but linking to Reddit threads for evidence, it seems a little odd, but I mean, whatever, it's what it is. But you know, she's not wrong. There are entire Reddit threads about such instances, discussing how the original Sokka, prior to his character journey, would make remarks like girls are better at fixing pants than guys, and guys are better at hunting and fighting. Usli, that's probably not how you pronounce his name, agrees. Yeah, totally. There are things that were redirected just because it might play a little differently in live action. But calling it iffy, oof. And even if we go to this article, now this one implies that this Reddit thread is arguing that, like, yeah, Sokka was like a little bit sexist. Like, what the hell? Like they're kind of pissed at Sokka. Might be the framing that you're getting from this. So let's actually just go to that Reddit thread. And it's only funny because before, as this guy points out, this 25 vote post link got in 2 separate articles today as some sort of proof. Entire Reddit threads about Sokka's sexism, discussing how the original Sokka, prior to his character journey, would make remarks like girls are better, and then the original quote. Wow, entire Reddit threads. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like this small thread that had 25 likes before, nothing against this person, but I mean, entire threads, making it sound like there's this huge fan discourse. But actually, let's even read what they wrote. Considering how misogynistic Sokka was in the first few episodes of Atla, it's quite funny to think how he won the hearts of some of the most powerful women of his time. And this is totally true. He goes out with a moon princess. He dates Suki of the, oh my goodness, the Kyoshi Warriors. Toph kind of has a crush on him. Even Ty Lee, I think, as they mentioned, Ty Lee, I think kind of acts a little flirtatious with him. So, but the point here is not that, like, wow, what a sexist Sokka is. It's like, no, despite the low point he started off in, his points were so high, and like, even all these commenters agreeing, like, seriously though, let's solve the mystery once and for all. Yes, Sokka has a poor attitude towards women and girls. The fact that he improves over time is called character growth, and is in fact one of the signs of good storytelling. Taking it out of your movie only tells us how low of an opinion you have for your audience, Netflix. It's one of the few initial negatives about Sokka, that he grows and learns from it. He literally is probably just jealous. He isn't a waterbender initially, which you can definitely read this into the third season, when he's the only one who doesn't bend any sort of element, and he's just known as the boomerang guy, I guess. And yeah, main characters can have flaws. How else is growth supposed to be shown? And more people agreeing across here, linking to that article. But Sokka's sexism was part of a story arc for his character development. He was humbled by female warriors, the Kyoshi Warriors, and that humility led him to ask to learn from them and help him become a stronger fighter in the end. And yeah, so a lot of people are taking lots of issue with that. And even here, let's read this one. I actually like this one. I'm so tired of media having to portray every character as unrealistically politically correct, because they are understandably scared the audiences will overreact to flaws. People are racist, sexist, and ignorant in real life, and yes, these people can grow and change, and culture and society would be better if the media acknowledged this. Yeah, I think this is my favorite comment of the whole bunch. And it's like, yeah, like nowadays it feels like we're afraid of character growth. Like, not everyone needs to be perfect right from the get-go. And especially some of these new adaptations, like, oh man. But what's so funny about all this discourse around, like, oh, what a sexist Sokka is. You might think his whole arc, that ends with him battling the Kyoshi Warriors and getting utterly humiliated. Let's keep that clear. So, I think that's a point I gotta bring up. Never once is Sokka's behavior ever portrayed as in a positive light towards the audience. I think that needs to be pointed out very clearly. I mean, if you have no idea what Avatar is, which is really funny you're watching this video, but let's just pretend you've never heard of Avatar, and you hear about this trailer coming out for the Netflix adaptation, and then people are talking about how sexist that Nickelodeon kids cartoon back in the 2000s were. It's like, whoa, like what? Like, what's this Sokka character doing? Like, is he chomping on a cigar and grabbing women's asses and telling them to make him a sandwich or something like that? It's like, no, let's tone it down a bit. He's really rude to Katara and constantly pointing out how like, oh, men are better, like, as those commenters said, like hunting and fighting, and women are better at like making clothes and repairing pants, right? Like, iffy is really, really weird to be calling that iffy. I mean, you know what I would call iffy? Genocide. Genocide is pretty iffy to me. And yet, that's the whole core premise to the show of Aang's destiny. We learn it. I think it's in the first episode. We learn that the air nomad tribe got completely wiped out by the Fire Nation. So, I mean, like, are we just gonna dance around that? Like, or no, they did survive and it's all fine. I mean, you know what else is a little bit iffy? Child abuse. And yet, even in the trailer, I think we see the moment where Zuko's father burns his face. So, you know, child abuse, genocide, also a bit iffy, I feel. But let's go on, let's move forward with some other changes. You know, I've been wholly negative, but maybe, you know, it's still an adaptation, you know, just because they cut out, like, his sexist bits, whatever. I mean, I think it's a bit vital for where Sokka's journey starts. But I want to focus on some things that maybe are, let's say, just pertaining to the realism of running a live-action adaptation of a 2D animated show, and where some of the limitations lie. So, you know, let's give them a break when it comes to a couple things, like in regards to Aang's avatar state, right? So let's get into this quote. In fact, we actually don't see Aang going into the avatar state as much in our first season as they did in the animated series, because we wanted to make sure that it felt very special. We wanted to make it very clear that Aang could only access that state in a specific set of circumstances. We actually tweaked the rules a little bit from the original series as to when and how he can access that state. There are certain things that we are going to modify, if we're going to change, and hopefully fans will see that all for the good of the story as a whole, and in dimensionalizing the story and bringing it from one medium to another. And I feel like, yeah, okay, but how much of that is just a monetary reason why we're not bringing him to the avatar state a lot? And, you know, maybe this might be just a really healthy creative decision, you know, like if he only ever turns to the avatar state once, only that one time really matters in the Northern Water Tribe when they travel there. That's the only real time that it's 100% vital that he does that, because his first time, I think in the third episode, you know, it's just showing that he can, I guess. So I mean, so aren't those the only two times? So, I mean, I don't know. Still, limitation of budget, so, I don't know. We have to be realistic, you know. I don't want to hold that against them. I don't want to hold everything against them. But, like, as they mentioned, limited, I have to go back to getting negative again. Because, you know, they mentioned streamlining Aang's story and, you know, giving it some narrative focus. And that likely is a limit of budget, too. You know, we can't be goofing around, going to different places, doing different things all the time. We kind of have to keep focus on it so we can kind of condense this story. Kind of like the live-action One Piece did. You know, it's a limitation. It's a realistic limitation, you know. I won't knock them for that. But then, Albert Kim, the showrunner, as we mentioned a few of his quotes before, but he mentions that Azula will have a bigger role to play, and let's get into the quote. We know how big of a character Azula becomes in the series, so we had the benefit of hindsight in fleshing out her character and being able to tell her story with her in it in Season 1, Kim said. We all knew that there were things we wanted to change, but not just for the sake of change. That had to be a reason for the change. And that just seems really interesting that she would even get an expanded role, because Azula's role in the first season could best be described as Thanos from the first Avengers. He's just there to show up and go like, you know, I gotta handle it. You gotta do things yourself. That's basically Azula's role in Season 1. At the end, she's like, hey, you're gonna head off and gotta handle this crap. And she's like, you know, she just gives a smile. Or I don't even know if she says a word, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, she was not supposed to be like this big character in the first season. But now we're giving her more to do, which just seems another one of these, like, running counter to what you want to accomplish with the show. If you want to like streamline it. Now we're ripping away our focus from Zuko and Iroh, from Katara, you know, she has her own separate journey in there as well. So it's crazy. And then the last thing I have to mention. Oh boy. The showrunner says that I can't even get through this. Showrunner says they had to find a balance where the series appeals to OG fans and then people who liked Game of Thrones. It couldn't just be for kids. Oh. Wild. So, like, can adults who watched Game of Thrones handle a little bit of a sexist character that has character growth and becomes more of a mature adult? I guess not. I guess that's what we're being told. This will be the last thing, for real this time. So this has to do with why they're not using the Sozin's Comet plot thread. And this is another live action limitation that's, you know, you got to be understandable with this. You know, they're working on a schedule with teenagers. You know, one of them starting off at 12, but by the time it actually airs, he's already like 14, and like you're gonna do at least 3 or 4 seasons, and he's gonna be like 16 at that time. So you can't really use the Sozin's Comet plot line that only allows for 1 year's worth of time to go through. I mean, you could have extended it, but then who knows? Maybe, you know, there's another writer's strike or something goes on and they keep delaying. It's like, well, actually, the Sozin's Comet is coming in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So I understand their need to kind of throw out that ticking clock element. And he even goes on to describe here the showrunner. All 3 seasons of the animated series essentially take place on the course of 1 calendar year. There was no way we could do that, so we had to design the first season, especially to accommodate the possibility of some time elapsing between the first and the second season. One way to do that was Sozin's Comet, which played a prominent role in the animated series. The Comet was their ticking clock. We removed that particular ticking clock from our show for now, because we couldn't know exactly how old our actors would be from the subsequent seasons. So that's just something you can add to the very, very last season. And then it's like, oh shit. And then, you know, maybe how you could make it work is it's like, oh, it's not in a year. It's coming in 1 month. And then, the last season is just a lapsing of 1 month's time or something like that. So there's ways to make that work. And so, you know, some of it you got to be fair, some of it, you know, is a little bit questionable. But, you know, if One Piece can end up okay, decent, adequate, you know, then I think there is just the tiniest bit of chance this will end up okay. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Whatever. Like, comment, subscribe, my fellow sexist Nickelodeon kids show enjoyers.